for stopping by Shara Me with Books. My name is Edshara, and welcome to my new subscribers. I do appreciate you subscribing to my channel. So today's video is going to be all about the books that I read in September. I'm a couple days late, but I figure better late than never. I will start with the books that I rated the lowest and then work my way up to the top for this video. So the first book that I have is one of the NetGalley arcs that I received, and that was The Legend of Jack Ril by Edshara. This was a middle grade spooky novel, and for the most part I enjoyed it. I do believe this is a debut for the author, and it was really well written and very descriptive. The main character, Jack, was a very good protagonist. He was a bit naive at times, but for the most part he did show some growth throughout the novel, which I really enjoyed. The author kind of took a look at the darker side of fairy tales, which I really enjoyed. The author was able to kind of touch on bullying and, you know, how some of us are a little bit addicted to technology and some of those things without being overly preachy. I think it was like the perfect tone for a middle grade novel. The story overall was really good. I also liked the professor in the novel. His backstory was pretty cool and something I hadn't seen for that particular character. I wish there would have been a little bit more, and I think that was the main theme for this book for me, was I wanted a little bit more. It seemed like everything moved really quickly, and just as I was getting into one little segment of the story, you know, Jack was off and running to the next part. But overall the book was really good. I did end up giving it 3 stars just for the main fact. I think when I think about rating a book, I have to look at, okay, is this something I would read again? Is this something I would buy? Is this something I would recommend? And in the beginning I was a little hesitant to give it 3 stars because I felt like 3 stars was a little too low. But at the same time, I felt like 4 stars was a little too high, and I don't give half stars because that is not an option on Goodreads. So I went with 3 stars just because it's not something I would buy. It's not something that I would read again. Would I recommend it? Maybe to the middle grade audience, also to adults, I guess, if that is sort of the type of book you like to read. Maybe give it a try just to see if you would like it better than I do. And my second 3-star read is the second book in the Fablehaven series by Brandon Mull, and that is Rise of the Evening Star. If you don't know about this series, in the first book, Kendra and Seth, who are a brother and sister, with Kendra being the oldest, they find out that their paternal grandparents are sort of caretakers to this mythical or mythological creature sanctuary. And I really enjoyed that book. I am an 80s baby, so it gave me sort of the labyrinth and the never-ending story kind of feel. And I felt like this one kind of had a different tone or a different feel to it. I think my thought reading this book was they were kind of trying to gear it more towards the male audience, and so that was a little bit disappointing. But I think this one kind of gave me like a world building or a filling in the blanks kind of feel. There was something that happened to Kendra in the first book, and they spent a lot of this book kind of figuring out what the repercussions of that were. Also, Seth in the first book, he did something really stupid which caused a lot of the other events to kind of unfold because of the mistake that he made, and I kind of felt like he had that same bratty, dumb kind of feel in this book, and so I was really frustrated reading a lot of his scenes. So I'm hoping that he shows a little more growth in the last 3 books, because I really don't want to be frustrated with him as a character for the rest of the series. Also, the first half or more of the book just felt a little lackluster. Like I said, it had that world building thing kind of feel to it, so it just kind of felt like things were moving along a little bit slowly, and it wasn't as fun as the first book. The last couple of chapters did really pick up, and I was really enjoying it. There was a lot more action. In the end, the last couple of chapters did get me really excited for the next book, so I am eager to continue the series, which I do plan to do soon. But for me, this one wasn't as good as the first one, so I did end up giving it just the 3 stars. And my next book is The Crowns of Crosswalk by D.E. Knight. This is one where the main protagonist, Ivy, finds out that she has magical powers and then ends up going to a school that is supposed to teach her how to use her magic. Now, this does have comparisons to Harry Potter, and while I have not read the series yet, and I have seen bits of the movies. I know, don't judge me. But I will say, from the bits and pieces that I've seen from the movies, I will say I did see some similarities in here. But I think this book has enough original content to stand on its own and to hold up as a really great fantasy series, potentially. Also, reading this and loving it, because I did give it 4 stars, it actually makes me want to read Harry Potter a little bit more now. Just because if I loved this and this is similar, I can't imagine how I would love what most people would deem to be kind of the original, which is Harry Potter. So, with that said, I really, really love this book. The main protagonist, Ivy, she was a great, well-rounded character, I think. She was a little bit naive at times, but she was also pretty clever, and she was taking risks and doing things that I wasn't really expecting her to do. And that was really fun to see that she wasn't exactly all of who I thought she was. I also really liked the magic system. I thought it was a little bit different from what I've seen in other books or in other places. For instance, there are certain magical people in the book that get their magic from stones, and then there are certain magical people who get their magic from a quill. So they get a quill instead of a wand or something like that. So I thought that was pretty neat. These little creatures on the front are called Harrys, and they have a special little role within the community or within the world that Ivy is in. And I really like them, and I kind of want one now. But overall, this book was so much fun. It was so fun to be in this world. And I gave it 4 stars, and I would highly recommend this. And next up is Deadly Proof by Rachel Dillon. This was my second NetGalley arc that I read in September, and it was my first 5-star read of the month. I really enjoyed it. This book is a Christian fiction novel, and I expected to like it, but I wasn't thinking that I would love it as much as I did. This is about a lawyer, Kate, who is taking on a big pharmaceutical company in a lawsuit. And the pharmaceutical company is accused of producing a drug that is more harmful than it is good. And I loved that Kate was a really strong character, and she had a bit of depth to her. She dealt with loneliness and depression. And I've got to say, this is the first Christian fiction novel that I've ever read personally that dealt with mental health. And I really liked that because I don't think you see it too much in Christian fiction. And I like the fact that it is acknowledged that, you know, hey, Christians have problems too. And I also liked that, you know, while Kate had a very strong faith and a very strong relationship with God, her faith wasn't sort of this blanket cure-all for her problems, and she was fine. I liked that even though she had that strong faith, even though she had a good relationship with God, she still struggled. And she still had, you know, good days, but she still had bad days. And I liked that because I thought that was more realistic than just kind of saying, okay, I'm a Christian and all is well, because that's not always the case. It is a journey, it is a process, and I really enjoyed the fact that it wasn't something that was, okay, you know, she's good, she's saved, hallelujah. So I really enjoyed that. And while her loneliness and depression weren't like, it wasn't an overwhelmingly big part of the story, the inclusion of it felt realistic and it didn't feel forced. It felt like it fit the story, it fit the character really nicely. And again, I'm glad to have seen it included. Also, I liked Landon. He's the main male character and Kate's love interest. I liked, again, he had a relationship with God. It wasn't as strong as Kate's relationship per se, but he had a relationship. He acknowledged God, but he had his issues because of some of the things that had happened. You know, he had his questions. And if you're a Christian and you have never questioned God and some of the things that have happened to you, well, power to you. But I liked, again, the realistic side of, okay, you have Landon, he knows God, he loves God, etc., etc. But, you know, with some of the things that have happened, he has some questions. He's a little on the fence. And I think to show those types of things in Christian characters is good, because I think it's realistic, and I think it gives people the okay to kind of have that dialogue as, yes, I believe in God, or yes, I love God, etc., etc., but I have my problems, I have my issues, and I need help, or I need to talk about these things, or what have you. I think it opens up that dialogue, and I think that's a really good thing. The romance in the book was great because the book did take place over a couple of months. The romance, the timing of it, and the growth and progression of it, I think it was well done because it wasn't too fast, it wasn't too rushed. It progressed, I think, naturally, if that can happen in a fictional novel. But you know what I mean, I hope. Also, I loved the action in this book. I thought it fit the story really, really well for what was happening. It suited, you know, the things that were going on, and actually it kind of surprised me because there was some stuff happening that I wasn't really expecting, and I thought, again, it was well done, and overall this was a really good book. And if you are interested in Christian fiction or you're hesitant about it, I think this would be a good book to try, just because I don't think any one thing overwhelmed the plot. I don't think it was too preachy or anything like that. I really loved the tone and the flow of this book. And I do know this is the first in the series, so I can't wait to read the series. And the last book that I have to talk about is Memoirs of an Imaginary Friend by Matthew Dix. This was a reread for me, and I was a little bit hesitant to give it a go just because the first time I read it, it only took me a couple of days to read, and I gave it 5 stars, but I wasn't as critical of it as a reader then, and I also wasn't as aware as I am now back then. So I was hesitant to read it because I was afraid that it wouldn't hold up now. But once I started reading, I found myself falling into the world, and I love this book so much. I can honestly say this is now one of my all-time favorite reads. That's how much I enjoyed this. If you don't know, this is about a boy named Max who is on the spectrum, and he has an imaginary friend named Budo. And the book is very simplistic in its writing style because it is told from Budo's point of view, and since he is an imaginary friend, I think I would expect it to be a little bit more simple. So if that is sort of a deterrent, just kind of push through it if you give this a read. But I love this because, one, the author never states what Max's condition is. He never labels Max. He never says, okay, Max has autism or Max has Asperger's. He just lays out Max's differences and he goes from there, which I think is important because I think sometimes you have to look at people individually. We're so quick to put labels on things now. We're so quick to, say, okay, group him here and, be done with it. But I like that he didn't necessarily come out and say, hey, Max is this. He kind of, in some ways, I think, lets you form your own opinion. I also really liked the kind of difference between Max's parents. They were on opposite sides of the fence. One of them was a bit in denial as to Max's differences and Max's understanding of the world and how things worked. Whereas the other parent had kind of accepted it and wanted to, you know, figure out, okay, how can we help Max? How can we help him adjust? How can we adjust? What do we need to do to make things easier for not only ourselves, but for Max as well? And I liked that different dynamic. I don't know how realistic it is because I don't have any firsthand experience with a child who is perhaps autistic or on the spectrum, as they like to say. But I thought for the story it boded well because you could see the progression and the growth of the two characters as the book went on. Also, I really loved Max. He was such a fun little character to read about, and I just, you know, he's one of those sweet little boys that you kind of wish you knew, because even though he was quote unquote different, he was a good little kid, and I really enjoyed reading about him. And I think the thing that I love the most is, for all of his supposed differences and quirks or what have you, he created this living extension of himself in Budo, his imaginary friend. And he was able to cope with a world that wanted him to be normal, not himself. And I really enjoyed that because I think Budo was kind of everything that Max wasn't. And so to think about the mind and kind of the psychology of it, and to see, okay, here it is, this boy that everybody wants to label, everybody wants to group him. But, you know, he's pretty darn smart because he's created this imaginary character that can do more than other imaginary characters, has been alive longer than other imaginary characters, and it's allowing him to kind of exist in this world that doesn't want him as he is. And so I really, really like that. And this book, it just gives you all the feels, and I think it's handled really well. There's a lot that goes on in this book, and I really, really love this one. And this is one of those ones that I want to recommend to everyone to check out if it is at your library, or just go and buy it if you can. Just because I think it's really good, and I think it is really well written, and as simple as it is, very profound, even in its simplicity. And I love that about this book. And so, I want to share my baby with everybody. Like, go read it, because it's so good. And if you don't like it, don't tell me about it, because I don't want to know. No, but seriously, if this is something that you think you would be interested, please read it, because I think it's so good. And there's supposed to be a sequel. There was talk of a sequel. When I first read this, because there is sort of an epilogue that kind of makes you go, I was really, really interested in a sequel. And then I think the sequel is supposed to come out this year, summertime, probably around August. And Matthew Dix said that it was pushed back. And so I was a little disappointed, but now I'm kind of wondering, do I want a sequel? Or do I want to just leave it as it was because it was so good? So I don't know how I feel about that now, but I will say, again, I love this book. So those were all of the books that I read this month. Last month I should say. I had a great reading month, and I really enjoyed myself. Also, since it is officially fall, I wanted to do kind of a fun little question. Are you on the Team Pumpkin side, or are you Team Apple? I know that I am Team Apple. I like apple cider and apple crisp and apple pie, and, you know, all things apple cinnamony. I have tried to do the pumpkin thing. I'm just not a fan of pumpkin. I can't. I like the smell of it. I'm an apple girl. So what team are you on? Apple or pumpkin? Let me know in the comments down below. If you haven't followed me on my other social media accounts, I will put those in the description box. Again, thank you to all of my new subscribers. Thank you to all of my continued subscribers, those of you that come back and watch my videos and comment. I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And until next time, guys, God bless you. Bye. I'm not down with the pumpkin lattes or pumpkin rolls or